First, I would like to ask, by default here, I'm not going to ask you to confess to something that's illegal. So I would like to have, there's over 700 people in this room right now. I'd like to have a show of hands of how many people have not ingested psilocybin mushrooms. There may be... For the record, that was maybe 7 people. I was about 19 or 20 years of age, because this is what I looked like. Your suspicions are now confirmed, okay? So I want to pay tribute to my brother John Stamets. Unfortunately, he died several years ago. John first got me excited about mushrooms when he came back from Colombia. And he had these amazing stories of collecting psilocybin mushrooms in Colombia and Mexico and having these amazing trips. And I was really excited to hear about him. I was the youngest brother of 5 children. I grew up in a small conservative town called Columbiana, Ohio. Well, John went on to Yale University. On one of his returns from Yale, because he was studying chemistry and neurophysiology, came back with this copy of this book, Altered States of Consciousness by Charles Tart. This is around circa 1969, in that period, 1970. And I was really excited about this book. I said, John, can I borrow this book? And he goes, well, I need it for my class. I go, things about dreaming, things about vertigo, things about, using drugs. And I was like really excited. I was 14 years of age. And John goes, well, I'll lend you the book, but I need it back. So I got the book, and I'm just voraciously reading it. But my best friend, Ryan, he was tagging with me, and he was interested in the book. And Ryan goes, hey, Paul, can I borrow the book? And I go, it's my brother John's, but I got to get it back. And he goes, it's okay, I promise. So he borrows my book, my brother John's book. So a week goes by, 2 weeks go by. Ryan, where's my book? And Ryan's like hesitating. And another week, Ryan, where's my book? My brother needs my book. It's for his class. And he goes, and then finally, said, Ryan, where's my friggin' book? I didn't use that friggin' word. But, and then Ryan looked at me sort of very ashamedly, and I said, I can't give it back to you, Paul. I said, why? This is, my dad discovered it and burned it. And I want to state publicly that I have a debt of gratitude to Ryan's father, because that single act of destroying a book on the altered states of consciousness catapulted my interest into the forefront. So I went on to the Evergreen State College. We were covered by a Drug Enforcement Administration license. I've published 4 new species in the genus Psilocybe, Psilocybe azurescens, Psilocybe lentiformis, variety Americana, Cynofibulosa, and Psilocybe wiley, named after my good friend Andy Weil. So I want to draw your attention to Psilocybe cubensis. It's the most majestic psilocybin mushroom in the world. It grows on a wide array of animal dung. And it co-inhabits with another magic mushroom called Copelandia cyanescens, a whole bunch of species in that genus, also known as Pinellus. So these mushrooms are circumpolar in the subtropics and tropical regions all over the world, from Africa to Amazonia. And they're temporal. They arise and they disappear in a matter of 4 or 5 days. Your experiential window of contact and experience with other plants and animals is long-term, weeks, months, years. But something that comes up that could feed you, that can heal you, that can send you on a fabulous spiritual journey, something that comes up and disappears so quickly, only the cognoscente, rare elite individuals of this eclectic knowledge could carry this knowledge forward. There are 23 primates that consume mushrooms, 22 not being human. And the Golgi monkey consumes up to 12 times its body weight per year. So when you think that 23 primates have knowledge in distinguishing poisonous from edible mushrooms, which ones are good for you and which ones not, it speaks to a very, very long genetic and evolutionary history of contact and use and the knowledge of mushrooms that are valuable. So I present this to you because I want to bring back the concept of the stoned ape hypothesis. And and this is really important for you to understand, but Homo sapiens emerged as the very lead of the primates. And what it could possibly explain this? Now, Terence McKenna, and I want to state for the record now that Dennis McKenna and Terence came up with this concept that consuming psilocybin mushrooms could expand human consciousness. Terence became the amplifier and the voice of that concept, being exposed to these psilocybin mushrooms. Now, this happened not once, not twice. As our primates descended from the forest canopies and went across the savannas, and you're tracking animals, ungulates, what do you look for? You look for footprints, paw prints. You look for scat. The majority of primates are grub eaters. They eat insects. So you're going across the savanna, you run into what? The largest psilocybin mushroom in the world, growing bodaciously out of dung of the animals that you're tracking. You're hungry. It looks edible. You ingest it. You're catapulted into this incredible psychedelic experience, fractal patterns, mosaics, love, empathy. That doesn't happen once. That doesn't happen twice. That happens millions upon millions upon millions of times over hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. I suggest to you that Dennis and Terence were right on. I think this is a very, very plausible hypothesis for the sudden evolution of Homo sapiens away from our primate relatives. You all know about this. It's been reported in most of the major magazines. And we know that psilocybin causes neurogenesis. Now, it causes the extinction in this experiment of a conditioned fear response, similar to PTSD. So, if under the influence of psilocybin, you can overcome a conditioned fear response, to react negatively to a stimulus, you can overcome that. Well, what does that suggest? Psilocybin induces courage. To overcome a fear response, we know it induces kindness. Well, these are leadership skills. I wish many of our leaders, if not most of them, would take psilocybin mushrooms in order to become better leaders. Terence McKenna, Andy Weil, Gary Menzer, and Stephen Pollack were some of the key people on the West Coast of North America. There are pioneers in learning, studying, and spreading the knowledge about psilocybin mushrooms. I created Spores de Illuminatus, containing 200 million spores of psilocybe azurescens, omni psilocybe munda, So we spread psilocybin mushroom spores up and down the West Coast, part of our Mary Sprankster efforts. And then for more than 40 years, there's a number of conferences later on in Europe. I know some of the participants here are in this photograph. So this conference that we're at today is a continuum, a bridge, literally over thousands of years, of mushroom experts and experts in psychoactive plants and substances carrying this knowledge forward. The fact that we are here today, we are becoming the body intellect, the encyclopedia of knowledge that is carrying this information forward for the future. And I think it's important for the evolution and the survival of the human species. So psilocybe cyanescens, azurescens, I point this out because psilocybe azurescens, the species that I named, is a very large species compared to psilocybe cyanescens. It is a species in that it is the most potent psilocybin mushroom in the world, containing up to 2% psilocybin. And I want to show you something that I discovered that's truly counterintuitive. And this is ice cube extraction, using psilocybe mushrooms when they're fresh, and chopping them up, and then putting them in contact with ice cubes, and then putting them into a refrigerator and letting the ice cubes slowly thaw. And you do a cold water extraction to create blue juice. So blue juice, great for the playa at Burning Man. Because you can make ice cubes when it's hot, But I want to speak to those people who are chemists here to really look at this fractionation sequence. Most fractionations are occurring with hot water or hot solvents. This is using cold water. It does not work with dried mushrooms. It only works with fresh mushrooms. I had a good friend, my friend Jerry from Vermont, He was growing some psilocybin azurescens in his backyard. I told him, Jerry, this is the most potent mushroom in the world. You got to be careful. You got to be careful. And he goes, okay, Paul, I got it. And I go, Jerry, no matter what happens, don't call the ambulance. Don't go to the hospital. The paralysis symptoms are temporary. Just look, watch, and in 4 hours, everything will be fine. Just remember that. So I don't see Jerry for a year. He comes back and goes, oh my God, Paul, I got to tell you a story. I go, what happened? He says, well, we grew a whole bunch of them, and I didn't know how many they ate, so we ate a whole bunch. We ate way too many. I said, well, what happened? He goes, we were like lizard people on the crawling around, and they're like, oh my God, this is so intense, and they couldn't move, they couldn't walk. This is going out, by the way. So 6 people who, were all like lizards coming together, and Jerry goes, wait, I have a message from Paul. I have a message from Paul. And they go, what's the message from Paul? What's the message from Paul? He said, no matter what happens, and if this happens, don't worry, just look at my watch, and in 4 hours, everything will be fine. So they all kind of crawled up and went to the watch and went to Jerry's watch and look at Jerry's watch, and they go, and it went, click, click. And they went, oh no! Anyhow, but the difference between a medicine and a toxin is oftentimes dose, okay?